Hello again, Dan Alasso, Making History. It is day 46, I believe, of my retrenchment journey, and I am focusing, as I mentioned yesterday, on kind of moving forward rather than really kind of dwelling too much on things that are not working out right or that I'm upset about at my current job. I will continue to relate news as it develops, but luckily nothing is happening right now, and so I am using my attention on other things. Actually, I woke up in the middle of the night last night, and I couldn't immediately get back to sleep. And this happens to me sometimes when my brain is at work on something that it wants me to write down. So I've got myself a cup of coffee here. What I did was I grabbed my iPad and I started putting down some thoughts about a question that had been on my mind, I guess, for quite a while, that I had some new ideas about. And then after a while I went back to sleep, and I did kind of sleep in a little bit. So the question that was in my mind was how much to give away and what I should try to think about packaging for sale if I do end up being a freelance creator of web content. It occurred to me that the problem of providing excerpts or shorter versions of long explorations of a topic to give away as free advertisements for the more in-depth coverage is kind of similar to the ways that textbooks summarize and simplify complex subjects that people could write entire monographs about. My current solution in my American Environmental History course, which is based on my textbook, is to give my chapter version and then refer the student to a monograph that deals with the topic in greater detail. Each of the chapters is really designed to explore the ideas that came out of one of the foundational monographs of environmental history. So I'm curious whether I could use this technique effectively in a kind of a branching ebook design where the chapters are not really that linear and I don't try to pack everything into the scrolling text, but maybe in design they're really sections that are made up of subchapters that could explore topics in greater detail, kind of optionally. The issue of optionality is made so much easier if I drop the idea of grading requirements. If a student doesn't have to read everything, because let's face it, a reader of a book doesn't have to. They can go to the part that interests them, and it's the author's job to keep them interested and to keep them turning from one page to the next. It's an obligation that professors don't always feel as urgently. We have the advantage of being able to say, this is going to be on the test. If we didn't have that, we might have to give the student the incentive that the material is actually interesting. Just like someone who was reading it for their own edification or enjoyment. And this leads me to the question of how would a course for people not getting college credits differ from what I'm doing right now? I think part of the answer to that is I would be able to be just as rigorous and tell just as complex a story or provide just as complicated an interpretation as I would do in the classroom. There are plenty of bestsellers that are complicated and nuanced, at least as much as any undergraduate course is. How would a branching ebook work? In order to keep it relatively simple to publish, it would be great if I could figure out a way to do this in Pressbooks, the tool that I'm already using. Obviously, I already can and am adding multimedia and hyperlinks both to other things inside the ebook and to things in the outside web. So if I don't worry that much about the linearity and I allow myself to add runners or rhizomes that shoot out from the main narrative, that might be a step in the right direction. And then the glimpses of the topic that point to the more developed ideas in the pages to the side could also double as content of teaser public posts, videos, etc., that advertise these more detailed and maybe not free elements, and maybe even that advertise the course itself. This, I think, obviously also has the potential to answer that question that I've had a hard time resolving about how to create a layered content strategy where I give away a lot, but maybe not quite everything. If I'm going to earn a living producing stuff for the world on the web, I will need to get paid for some of it. Another big element of a paid online class, of course, could be interaction, so not just the content itself. At first, I suppose, interaction with me, since I won't be able to ensure that there are always enough other people at any given time to interact with. But once there are folks reliably showing up for a course, then maybe I could create cohorts that would interact with each other as well. I think class discussion is a really valuable tool, and I would like to make that a part of things that I do online. So I can begin by taking a course, let's say American Environmental History to start, and identifying areas where I could condense the content a little bit in the chapter and then expand it on the side. This might actually make some of the chapters a little bit shorter. I'll have to make sure there's still enough of a narrative in the chapter that remains to make the point that I want to make. And then I'll be able to actually expand on some of the stuff in the side pieces that may have been a little bit tangential. It too, of course, should contribute to the overall theme, but I will be able to indulge myself a little bit more, I think. One of the things that I've already been doing is discussing the monographs that were the basis of each chapter, that were the inspiration and kind of the guide each chapter. Because I'm teaching undergrads, I'm only having them read and discuss a single chapter of it. But there's nothing to say that I couldn't give a much more detailed synopsis of the entire book. Copyright doesn't prevent me from talking about someone else's entire book, as long as I, of course, am citing the source. If anything, it might interest my readers in picking up the text I describe to see if they agree with my interpretation. And I could also use this as a way of modeling how to create a web of knowledge. The ideas in American environmental history really are that already. I've just sort of hammered them into a story of sorts, following the typical chronology of American history. In a strange way, this train of thought may have come to me in the night as my brain was processing the discussion that we had in my book club yesterday. We were talking about chapters 5 through 9 of Adler and Van Doren's How to Read a Book. The authors had been describing how to discover what they called the unity of the book, which I interpreted as the overall theme. I was a little bit annoyed with their somewhat magisterial tone, as I frequently am with this book. Adler wrote the original edition in 1940, and the book probably tries to do a little bit more than it should, and to appeal to a wider range of readers with too wide a level of reading experience. In any case, I started thinking about what it would be like to write a book that had multiple themes. Or maybe if it did have one overall theme, the sub-themes were the more interesting and important elements of it. Maybe this is what attracts me to the idea of a web of knowledge, with interesting little jewels scattered across it. Something like an obsidian graph. Maybe someday the textbook will become something much more like that. But I'll probably start with a hyperlinked ebook. And I'll let you know how that goes and whether I'm successful with this experiment. But for now, I hope you found that a little bit interesting. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you again tomorrow.